Warning! Tube amplifiers have lethal voltages inside them. Please do not attempt to build, test, or repair these without understanding and following all safety protocols. Hey y'all! Well, this is the second video in this Little Bear preamp rebuild, and hope y'all are having fun watching this. And without wasting a bunch of time, let's get back into fixing the project. Okay, so I looked at the wiring diagram and the board and followed the traces and figured out where things are going. And I've marked the spot that is going to be the direction that the signal is flowing. We want to have the lettering in that same direction on these Mundorf caps. So we're going from the plate to the grid with the lettering going in the direction that the signal's going through the cap. That's the easiest way to remember it. And then this inner one and then this one over here are the big caps. So it's going to be this one here that's closest to the tube, and then this one over here by its lonesome over here. Those are the two 1 UF caps, and then we're replacing this 0.47 UF with a 0.1. So let's pop all these caps in their spots, bend the leads over on the other side, and solder them in, and we will be finished modifying this Little Bear amp, or preamp, or phono stage, whatever you want to call this thing. There's those two. Let's go ahead and put these big guys in next. This direction. We've got plenty of room. I may raise this one off the board a little bit to get it away from those resistors and give us a little bit of room if we need to move it around to fit it inside the case easily, because we got all that room. So there's no point in jamming it right up against the board. I'm going to go ahead and tack these ones down that I've got put in place so far. I'm actually going to stand these up a little bit proud of the board too. There's no reason to have them just shoved right up against the board. They'd be, with a little distance in there, there'd be a little less chance of them picking up any possible noise that are going in those traces that are going underneath them. And I've learned that it doesn't take a lot of space between like a component and a noise source to make it disappear. If you got the room, you might as well use it. Right? There we go. And we'll clip these leads off. And if you're using something besides these Mundorf caps, the directionality of them, it's not like an electrolytic cap, where if you put it in backwards, it's going to explode or cause some massive problems. But you're trying to keep the preamp as quiet as you can, and by putting the outer foil of the cap towards the lowest impedance, which would be the plate, you are helping keep the amp as quiet as possible. So this little guy is going to go right there. That. And then let's put this other big one in. And it's going the opposite direction of all these other caps. I'm going to stand that one up about the same distance. And then go ahead and solder these two. And then come back and do that one last one. And we're all done. I really hope this makes this little bear a happy little phono preamp. This is definitely a lot cheaper and easier route than fabricating one of those EAR834 clone preamps from scratch. And even if it comes out to be 90% as good, that's going to be better than most of the phono preamps that I've listened to, especially those little cheap things that they sell on Amazon, and might be a good route to go if you don't really have the fabrication skills or the time or want to spend the money that building one of those EAR834 clones takes. So then this one goes in this direction. We'll try to move this one. It's another reason to leave a little extra lead in there so we can have some room to keep these caps away from each other. We can bend those over a little bit once we get this soldered in place. There we go. And make sure that you apply the temperature both to the pad and the lead of the component, and that you flow the solder in, and then just leave the iron on there just a second. It's not going to hurt anything. And make sure that you get a nice flow of solder into the board. And if you've done it right, you'll see solder on both sides of the board. The side you're working from, and a little bit will come through on this side too. And that way you know you've got a really good solder joint. But there we go. In case that's close to the edge, make sure we got enough room there. And we've got our caps away from each other and everything, and that looks all spiffy neat, doesn't it? And now we've got the correct impedance to match your normal moving magnet cartridge. Now if you measure from the center to the ground, you should see 47K, and that's going to make your phono cartridge happy, as well as having some nicer capacitors. And then we've lowered the capacitance between the first two tubes, or the second tube and the third tube, and then we've increased the capacitance on the output to hopefully help the low frequency response. So next we will put this thing back into its case. Okay, so we're going to put our little bear back together here. First thing, you start off with the base, which is actually the top, and we're going to place this like that and get our tubes aligned we'll get these tube sockets and stuff aligned with these holes in the top plate. Then the first thing you're going to do is put the front back on it, this piece here, and goes in this direction like this, and then we'll dump all our stuff out here. First thing we're going to do is put the nut on the volume control, and that kind of holds the board to the front. And really there's nothing much that attaches the top to this board. Most of it is done with these stands that go into the bottom, but you have to put it together kind of, I guess it kind of looks like it's putting it together upside down. Then we come in here and put the 2 screws in for the RCA jacks. We're not going to tighten any of these screws up until we get everything all in place. The front has these Allen bolts. Get them started. Again, let's don't tighten anything until we get everything all aligned. So make sure the board's like sitting down like that. And the next thing we're going to connect is our ground for the Phono turntable, which is insulated from the chassis on this design. Put our wire in there. And I'm not super crazy about this little push connector thing they used, but you know, that does that deal, but it works. And so put something through there like that, and then we come in with our, either use a little adjustable wrench like I'm using here, or a pair of pliers. Snug that down. And we have our ground here connected, and I think now we can go ahead and tighten up this nut on the front and tighten up these 2 screws holding the phono jacks to the front panel, and look and make sure that all looks centered, and it does. I'm going to put the knob on later so we don't scratch the knob. The next thing we want to do is put the rear panel on. And it slips over that little switch there, and it's got a couple of Phillips head screws that hold it in place. Hopefully you can't hear my laundry going in the background, but if you do, I apologize. Go ahead and snug these up. Okay, now this little wire connects here. This is our ground to the IC connector, and then they had this thing kind of looped around like that, and then plug in our power switch. There's a zip tie here that kind of holds that all in place, just like that. Okay, I put these screws into these little stands so I wouldn't lose them. And the same here. But if you're working on it in one session, you can just put those screws in the little cup that you put your other screws in so you don't lose anything. And somehow the one little screw in the center went flying when I took it apart, or I knocked it across the room, and I never could find it, so I got a little silver one to replace it with, but it's in the bottom, you never see it, so I'm not concerned about that. So all we have left is to connect these wires from the power transformer up to this stuff, and when you're taking it apart, take a moment and take a picture with your phone, and that way you know where each one of these connectors plug in, because it looks like two of them could plug into two different places, and you don't want to get them mixed up. So the red and the black one goes in the front, the yellow one goes there, and then the 3-terminal one goes into this back one, and then the 2 red terminals connect to the little IEC connector board. So pull this thing over here like this. These two connect like this. That one plugs in there. The yellow one goes there. And the red and black one plugs in there. Just like that. With the 2 red ones coming up here to this board. And that's it. We're ready to put the cover on it. So as you can see, not a real difficult thing to assemble and disassemble. Obviously make sure you don't pinch any wires when you're sliding the cover back on. You don't want to create a short circuit. And there's the cover. And we'll start with this one screw in the center. And I'm not going to tighten any of these up until I get all of the screws started. And the longer screws go in the bottom, and then the shorter Allens go in the front, and the Phillips goes in the back. And it's one thing I can say about buying a pre-built little box like this. It would be very difficult to fabricate something from scratch that like has the vents in the right place, and has the the way this is CNC'd out in the front for the RCA jacks and the volume control. And that's the kind of thing that as a do-it-yourselfer would be very difficult to do, because I don't know about you guys, but I don't own a CNC milling machine. Clearly all of that was done with some sort of milling machine like that. And then, like I said at the start of the video, I know a lot of times they show you how to disassemble it and say reassembly is the reverse of the disassembly. In this case, disassembly is the reverse of assembling this. And I don't think we need to show you both. So, yeah, I think we're ready to put the 2 screws in the front. And then we're going to go back over all these screws one last time to make sure we tighten everything up. And then we'll put the knob on the front, and we're all done reassembling our little bear. And sometimes you have to kind of push down or wiggle to get these corner screws to get started. That's why you don't tighten them up until you get all of them started. And I think that's going to wrap up this video, and we will do a evaluation on what this sounds like in the next video, when we kind of go over how all these different preamps sound. And the last thing you do is make sure you got like the knob pretty even from like low volume to high volume split, like that. And this one just slides on. There's no set screw. And there we go. Got our little bear done. It's a good place to wrap up this video. So as you can see, swapping out those capacitors really wasn't a tough job. And the 2 resistors, I don't know why they put 62K impedance on the front end of this when I've never heard of a phono cartridge that wants to see 62K. But anyway, we've got that fixed. We've got some good tubes for it. Actually don't have time to really do much auditioning of this before I need to go on some business meetings and stuff, so we'll have to do that in a future video. Hope you enjoyed this little build series. If you did, please subscribe to the channel, please like the video, and we'll see you soon when we come back and review these phono stages. Have a nice day!